The knock came like a punch, 3 desperate slams against the door that shattered the silence of 2 a.m. I was already halfway down the hallway when the second round came. No one knocks like that unless something's wrong. When I opened the door, I didn't expect to see my daughter fall forward, limp and broken into my arms. Noelle. My voice cracked before I could catch it. She was shaking violently. Her skin was clammy. Blood clung to the corner of her mouth. Her left eye was swollen shut, the lid bruised and stretched like tissue paper. I held her tightly, one arm behind her shoulders, the other under her legs. She was lighter than I remembered. Inside, I set her down gently on the couch. Her breath came in gasps, her hand clutching her ribcage. She tried to sit up, then winced. What happened, I asked, but I already knew. Noelle's eyes filled again. She looked away, then back at me. He hit me, she whispered, because I told him to stop texting Denise. Her words landed heavier than any blow could have. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up, walked to my bedroom and closed the door behind me. In the back of my closet, pressed and untouched for 3 years, hung my police uniform. I took it out, piece by piece. Shirt, pants, nameplate, badge. I dressed slowly, deliberately, the way I used to before every difficult case. It didn't quite fit the way it used to, but that didn't matter. What I needed was clarity, and this uniform had always helped sharpen my resolve. When I stepped back into the living room, Noelle was still on the couch, curled under the throw blanket. She looked small, like she had when she was 9, and ran home after being pushed at school. I picked up the phone and dialed. My voice was steady. James, it's Leora. Start the plan. Now. I didn't wait for his response. I already knew what it would be. And in the silence that followed, I went to get the camera. Noelle winced as I dabbed the corner of her mouth with a warm cloth. Blood had dried into a line along her chin, crusted and dark. Her left eye was nearly shut, the skin around it a patchwork of swelling and broken vessels. She kept her gaze low, ashamed of something that wasn't hers to carry. I didn't want to bother you, she said, voice cracking. I just didn't know where else to go. I said nothing. I steadied the cloth in one hand and reached for my camera with the other. The lens clicked. Then again. Then again. Every image burned into memory proof that didn't blink or excuse. I moved to her wrist. She tried to pull away, but I gently held her still. Deep red bruises wrapped around her forearms, thumb-shaped marks that didn't fade when I pressed them. I lifted her sleeve. More. Did he use something? I asked quietly. She nodded, just barely. His belt. When he gets mad, he doesn't think. But he had planned this. The marks weren't rage, they were repetition. I paused. Your stomach. Can I? She hesitated, then lifted her shirt without a word. I almost dropped the camera. A massive bruise bloomed across her abdomen, violet and black at the center, fading at the edges like a dying storm. I had seen injuries like this before, but never on my child. I took the photos. Each flash lit the room in bursts, clinical, detached, almost cruel. But I had learned a long time ago, the law doesn't listen to emotion. It listens to evidence. She lowered her shirt and turned away. I didn't want you to see me like this, she whispered. I knelt beside her and tucked a blanket around her shoulders. You don't need to protect me, I said. Not from the truth. She closed her eyes and leaned into me, trembling less now. I stood and walked to my desk, opening the drawer where I kept the camera cable and a portable drive. The screen lit up as I transferred each file, labeling them with cold precision. I was halfway through backing them up when I noticed her phone vibrating on the table. By morning, Noelle had finally drifted into sleep on the couch, her breathing shallow but steady. I left a note on the table beside her. Back soon. Lock the door. Don't answer for anyone but me. The county records office was just opening when I arrived. Romero was already at his desk nursing a styrofoam cup of coffee. He looked up surprised to see me in plain clothes, then gave a warm nod. "Didn't expect to see you before noon, Leora," he said, smiling. "You finally tired of retirement?" "Not exactly," I replied. "I need to check something. The Esteban property, the parcel out in Saguaro Flat. Can you pull the most recent deed transfer?" His eyebrows lifted. "Sure. Just a second." He typed, then frowned. What I asked, the word already tight in my chest. He turned the screen toward me. "It was transferred last week." I leaned in. There it was, black and white. Grantee Denise Salgado, the woman Noelle had whispered about. The Mistress. And below that, Grantors Leora Esteban and Noelle Esteban. I stared at the signatures. Mine was shaky, the letters uneven. Noelle's looked like someone tried copying it from a tax form. "We never signed that," I said flatly. Romero's face went still. "Leora, I didn't process this one myself. Robert dropped it off, said you'd asked him to file it while you were dealing with family medical stuff." My jaw clenched. "Did he bring witnesses?" "He had a notary. External, not one of ours." Paperwork checked out on the surface. I took a breath, sharp and shallow. "I need a certified copy of that file." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll print it for you. But, off the record, you're not the first one he's done shady paperwork around." I met his eyes. "He's not getting away with it this time." As I walked out with the copy in hand, the sun beat down against the courthouse steps, too bright for the morning I'd just had. I folded the paper, once slid it into my folder next to the photos of Noelle, and started the car. The pawn shop was only 7 minutes from the county office. The bell above the pawn shop door jangled when I pushed it open. The place smelled like motor oil and burned plastic, same as always. One of Robert's employees, Leo, the lanky one with the chipped tooth, looked up from the glass counter and gave me a lazy half-smile. "Morning, Ms. Esteban? Looking to buy or sell?" "Neither," I said, walking straight past him toward the back office. "I need to speak with Robert." He didn't try to stop me. Maybe he knew better. Robert was behind his desk counting a stack of 20s with his sleeves rolled and sunglasses pushed up in his hair. He didn't even flinch when I opened the door. "Well, well." "The retired sheriff herself," he said, not looking up. "To what do I owe the honor?" Out doing nostalgia rounds, I shut the door behind me and dropped a thick manila folder onto his desk. The sound echoed sharp and final. He paused, one hand still holding the cash. "What's this evidence?" I said evenly. "Photographs of your wife's injuries, the forged deed to my father's land, and video footage of her collapse on my porch, bruised, bloody, and scared out of her mind." He laughed. "You think your badge still scares people? You're not even on the force anymore." I leaned in. "No, Robert, but court will." He leaned back in his chair, tapping the desk with the corner of one bill. "So what's this A threat? You think you can drag me through some courtroom drama and win? I don't think." "I know." His smirk faltered for a moment. Just a flicker. Then it returned, meaner than before. "You want to play this game? Fine. But I've got better lawyers, more friends, and a town full of people who'd rather see you fade out than stir up trouble." I didn't respond. I just gathered the folder calmly and turned toward the door. "Don't forget," I said. Without looking back, I've spent my life building cases like this. You've spent yours building enemies. As I stepped outside, the heat hit me full in the face, but I barely felt it. I had one more name to track down. Before noon, Denise Salgado. The bar on 5th was darker than I remembered, tucked behind a boarded-up laundromat and half a broken neon sign. The kind of place no one visited unless they were hiding or trying to be found by the wrong people. I spotted her near the back, tight dress hair too perfect for a weekday afternoon drink barely touched. Denise Salgado, the woman my daughter had whispered through blood and tears. I didn't wait for her to notice me. I slid into the booth across from her and placed the envelope on the sticky table between us. She looked up, startled, then narrowed her eyes. "You're Noelle's mother," she said flat. "And Robert's mother-in-law," I replied, just as flat. though that title is about to expire. She pushed her drink aside, eyeing the envelope like it might bite. What is that? Your future, I said. Or what's left of it. She hesitated, then pulled it open. Bank statements, overdue notices, copies of her signature on the forged land deed, photos of Robert and her arms wrapped around each other. He told me it was legal, she whispered, scanning the pages. He told you a lot of things. She let out a bitter laugh. He said I'd get a share of the property, that I wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. I watched her silent. Her fingers trembled as she flipped to the deed with her name on it. If this blows up, he'll throw me under the bus, won't he? He already has. You just haven't noticed yet. She leaned back, eyes suddenly glassy. You think they'll believe me? The courts, I think they'll believe the truth. Especially with what I already have. Denise bit her lip hard. I'll testify, she said, after a long pause. But only if you can protect me. He's not above anything. I'll handle protection, I said. You handle the truth. She nodded, once slow. I stood and left before she could change her mind. By the time I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A text from home. I just got another call from him. He's threatening me again. The paper slid under the door while I was in the kitchen. Reheating broth. No knock, no sound. Just the soft scrape on tile like a warning dressed in silence. I walked over slowly, heart already tight. Folded in half, no envelope. Just one line printed in uneven black ink. Drop it or lose your daughter. I stood there for a full minute, letting the words settle like ash. Then I unfolded it, smoothed the crease and walked to my bedroom. The safe was bolted into the wall behind the dresser. I unlocked it, added the note to the growing folder marked threats and tampering, then shut it tight. The kettle whistled as I stepped back into the kitchen, but I let the water boil until the sound felt like screaming. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in over a year. Rosales, he answered, tired but alert. It's me, I said. Leora. A pause. What's going on? I got a note. Under the door. No signature, but the message is clear. Read it. Drop it or lose your daughter. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, do you think he'll act on it? I don't think he's bluffing anymore. I'll get someone on Denise's house within the hour. Make sure they stay through the night. I will. I hung up and opened my laptop. The evidence log was already organized: photos, recordings, copies of the forged deed. I added the image of the threat note, time-stamped it, and typed a short annotation. Note received at residence 9:43 p.m. Language consistent with previous voice messages from Robert. Likely escalated due to Denise's shift in allegiance. I sat back in my chair and listened for any sound outside. A car passed, then silence. In the next room, Noelle stirred in her sleep and mumbled something I couldn't make out. I got up, shut off the kettle, poured the now cooled water into the sink, and started another pot. I wasn't going to sleep tonight, and neither, if I had my way, was Robert. At the market that morning, it felt like every aisle turned quiet the moment I walked past. Conversations clipped short. Eyes dropped to canned goods cereal boxes nowhere near mine. I reached for a head of lettuce and heard a whisper behind me. Maybe she's exaggerating. That girl always was dramatic. She showed up at 2 a.m. Sounds like a setup. Their words weren't meant for me, but they didn't care if I heard. I paid in cash and walked out, only to feel a wet splatter hit the concrete near my feet. A man in coveralls passed by without looking up. Lips curled into a smirk. I didn't give him the dignity of a response. Even at church the next day, the pastor paused mid-conversation when I entered the hallway. His smile flickered, then vanished altogether. He murmured something to a deacon and turned his back to me. I wasn't surprised. I'd spent years watching how fast people choose comfort over truth, but knowing it didn't make it easier to swallow. That afternoon, as the sun dropped low, and I stood at the kitchen window, washing out the last dish, a knock sounded at the back door. It was Miss Camila, holding a warm pot wrapped in a dish towel. "I brought chicken soup," she said, not waiting for an invitation. "Noelle still likes mine with extra hominy, right?" I nodded, but I couldn't speak yet. She stepped inside and set it down on the counter. "I heard what people are saying. I've seen the looks." I leaned against the sink, tired in a way bone sleep wouldn't fix. "They can say what they want," she said. But I saw what I saw. That girl was crying like her soul had been torn open. And Robert, he never fooled me. I turned, then finally meeting her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere, Leora," she said. "I'll stand with you. However long this takes." I felt the tension in my shoulders give way just enough to breathe. I ladled the soup into a bowl and set it beside the documents still spread across the table. The courtroom was already full when we arrived. Rosales stayed by Noelle's side, guiding her through the side entrance, while I walked through the front folder in hand. Every bench creaked with whispers, turned heads, and thinly veiled judgment. Robert sat at the defense table, smug in a pressed suit. His lawyer, some out-of-town man with a shiny tie and a colder stare, whispered in his ear. Robert didn't look at Noelle once. He didn't have to. His confidence radiated through every dismissive glance. Denise sat on the opposite side, alone. Her shoulders were stiff, but her eyes were clear. When the judge called her name, she stood slowly and walked to the stand. She told the truth. About the affair, about the promise of land, about the pressure to sign the deed and keep quiet. She held up the forged document and admitted to letting him use her name. Her voice cracked when she said, "He told me Noelle would never fight back." Then came the photos, each one projected on the screen. The bruises, the split lip, the blackened eye, the medical records, the time-stamped porch video Noelle collapsing into my arms, the sound of her crying through the night. When they called me to the stand, I felt every gaze follow me like a weight across the floor. "I was a cop for 30 years, I said, hand resting near the evidence folder. "But today I'm not here as an officer. I'm here as a mother." I told them what I saw, what I documented, what he threatened. I kept my voice steady even as my hands itched to shake. When I finished, Robert stood up, eyes wild. "She's lying. They all are. They want to ruin me." The judge slammed the gavel once. "Mr. Delgado, you will remain silent or be removed." Noelle flinched beside me but didn't look away. The prosecution rested. The defense tried to claim manipulation, extortion, some nonsense about vendettas and jealousy, but the room had shifted. The silence now felt different, like everyone finally knew the truth had arrived. I sat back down next to my daughter and reached for her hand as the judge called for a recess before the verdict. The courtroom was hushed when Judge Marlowe returned. No one breathed. Even Robert sat still, though the muscles in his jaw twitched like a clock about to snap. The verdict came in measured tones like punctuation marks against stone. Protective order granted. Property deed transfer nullified. Felony charges for assault and fraud recommended to the district attorney. Robert's face didn't move until the bailiff approached with cuffs. Then he exploded. "You'll regret this, all of you. This isn't over." His voice echoed against the wood-paneled walls. I didn't flinch. I'd heard louder in interrogation rooms and emptier threats. The judge didn't even raise his head as the gavel fell. "Remove him." As they dragged Robert out, his lawyer tried to gather the scattered papers. Even he looked relieved to be done with it. Noelle stayed rooted in her seat, trembling not from fear, but from something more fragile, disbelief. I reached over and placed my hand on her shoulder. She turned slowly and met my eyes. Outside, the air was thick and still. A few people had gathered on the courthouse steps. Some we knew, most we didn't. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "She won. That's her daughter." I didn't think they'd actually do it. I didn't respond. I didn't feel like a winner. There was no triumph in watching your daughter testify to being beaten. No joy in proving that someone you once invited to your table had forged your name, your trust, your legacy. We stepped past the murmurs, past the stares, past the way people couldn't decide whether to nod or turn away. Rosales met us at the car. "He'll be held without bail for now," he said. "There's already talk of additional charges." I nodded once more out of exhaustion, then relief. When we got home, Noelle went straight to her room and closed the door softly behind her. I didn't follow. I just stood in the kitchen staring at the light shifting across the counter. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't peace, not yet. I turned to the fridge and reached for the last of the broth Camilla had brought over. Weeks passed without incident. No more late-night knocks. No more anonymous threats. The silence that once felt sharp and waiting had softened into something that resembled calm. Noelle returned to work on a Tuesday. She stood in the doorway that morning holding her bag like she wasn't sure if it would collapse in her hands. "You don't have to prove anything," I told her. "I know," she said, but she still went. That evening, I heard her in the kitchen, humming soft, uncertain, but it was there. The melody stumbled at first, like it forgot where it belonged, but she caught it and kept going. When I peeked in, she was folding tortilla sauce, bubbling quietly on the stove. "Enchiladas?" I asked. She smiled over her shoulder, felt like something warm. I nodded and left her to it. Some things I've learned grow stronger in silence. I took my coffee lukewarm now and stepped onto the porch. The sky was shifting, streaked with pale orange and lavender, the last breath of daylight folding itself into the hills. I sat in the old chair with the cracked armrest and let the cup rest between my palms. The badge I once carried sat on the small table beside me, dulled with age, still heavy with memory. I didn't keep it for pride. I kept it as a reminder. Not everything I'd protected had been on the streets. Some battles found you at home. Inside, I heard the oven door open, then close. Noelle's humming grew steadier, almost familiar. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to watch every shadow. But I didn't move the badge. Some part of me knew the quiet wouldn't last forever. Life didn't promise that, but it had given us this stretch of stillness where her laughter might grow roots again, where my hands no longer had to shake when I folded towels or turned on the porch light. I took a sip of the coffee, now cold and bitter, and didn't mind it. It was quiet, but nothing inside me had gone still.